Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to our show that's called Real Shame. It's a show where we two guys sitting across from you watch movies from our movie list of shame or movie blind spots. Excuse me. Basically, movies we haven't seen that we're watching and fixing and telling you all about it. I'm Adam.
I'm Andy.
This week we're watching some movies that I have never seen. And I was going to say I never heard of, but I actually have heard of this first movie. And the second movie. I don't even know why I said that. They're movies I've never seen, but I have heard of them.
Okay.
And to get into that and get down in the dirt and start talking about it, I'm going to hand it over to my friend Andy. Andy, why don't you tell us all about it?
All right. The Joad family leave their home in Oklahoma and travel west to California during the Great Depression, searching for work and a place to belong in The Grapes of Wrath. So, The Grapes of Wrath was released in 1940. It's directed by famous film director John Ford.
Right.
John Ford was a super
Played by David Lynch.
yes, played by David Lynch in the Fablemans. John Ford was a super prolific director. He directed tons and tons of films, and some very famous films. Among them were The Informer, Stagecoach with John Wayne, How Green Was My Valley, My Darling Clementine, The Quiet Man, which we've talked about on the show with John Wayne, and Maureen. I already forgot her name. Sorry, The Searchers, and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. Screenplay is by Nunnally Johnson. So Nunnally Johnson, I was looking up what he wrote. He wrote some movies that I really like. First off, he wrote more than just this, but these are the three that I cherry picked. He wrote The Woman in the Window from 1945. It's a Fritz Lang movie with Edward G. Robinson and Joan Bennett, which I think is awesome. He wrote Mr. Hobbs Takes a Vacation with Jimmy Stewart. Love that movie. And he wrote The World of Henry Orient, which is a Peter Sellers movie that everybody should see. This movie, the screenplay is adapted obviously from the 1939 novel by famous author John Steinbeck. Actually, the novel is a Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, and John Steinbeck, later in life, won the Nobel Prize for Literature. So, Nobel Prize-winning John Steinbeck. Did you ever read The Grapes of Wrath in school?
You know, I'm trying to remember. I have not read Grapes of Wrath. I'm trying to remember if it's one of those novels that I was assigned to read, like To Kill a Mockingbird. I never did. So I'm not sure if I was assigned to it or not.
I don't think I was ever assigned The Grapes of Wrath.
Yeah.
I was assigned To Kill a Mockingbird, and I actually did read that. I don't think I was ever assigned The Grapes of Wrath, and I have not ever read it either. So one thing about the Grapes of Wrath book that I discovered as I was looking up these notes, I did not know this. Apparently, back when John Steinbeck wrote the novel The Grapes of Wrath, there was another woman named Sonora Babb who was writing a book also about migrant workers traveling to California. That book was never published, although she did write it in the 1930s. That book was never published. It was finally published around 2004, I think. It's called Whose Names Are Unknown. The reason I mention it is because apparently John Steinbeck got a sneak peek at her notes for that book, and there's a lot of similarities in his book, The Grapes of Wrath. So I feel like she needs some credit here. She needs to get a shout out. Sonora Babb, so the book was published. She lived to be like 90 or something. The book was published like a year before she finally passed away.
Wow.
But so apparently he did a little cribbing from her notes for his book, The Grapes of Wrath. The Grapes of Wrath movie, however, stars Henry Fonda as Tom Joad. We've seen Henry Fonda at least in Failsafe. I'm not sure if we've watched any other movies with him. I can't remember. Henry Fonda as Tom Joad. John Carradine plays Jim Casey. John Carradine had a super long career just like Henry Fonda. John Carradine had a super long career, and much like George Kennedy, later in life, the roles that he took were somewhat questionable.
Yeah.
And he took a lot of kind of schlocky kind of films, but some of them are pretty fun.
Well, both of them have children in the entertainment industry too.
They do. Fonda's got kids, Jane and Peter.
Yep.
Although Peter passed away, and John Carradine, David, Keith, Robert, and probably some more. And David's passed away, but Keith and Robert and those guys. I feel like there's more than that. There's more Carradines. He's got a whole Carradine brood running around. Jane Darwell plays Ma Joad. Russell Simpson plays Pa Joad. Uthout Zabriskie Whitehead plays Al Joad. But fortunately for everybody, he went by OZ. I just like to spell out his name because Uthout Zabriskie is pretty interesting.
It is very interesting.
Charlie Grapewind plays Grandpa Joad. Zeffie Tilbury, that's another interesting name. Zeffie Tilbury plays Grandma Joad. Doris Bowden plays Rosa Sharon Joad. Frank Darien plays Uncle John. And finally, look for Ward Bond and Frank Phelan. Several years before they played Bert and Ernie in It's a Wonderful Life, both of those guys are in this movie, although both of them have pretty small roles. But they both do have lines. I mean, you'll recognize them. If you know them as Bert and Ernie from It's a Wonderful Life, you'll recognize them here. So The Grapes of Wrath, neither one of us have read it.
Nope.
I've seen this movie one time, I think, before. Right. I don't think I've seen it more than once, and it's been a while since I've seen it. But you've never seen it.
Never seen
and
it.
Since you've never read the book, you probably didn't know the story.
I did not.
Behind it, so you're going into this.
I still don't know what Grapes of Wrath are.
Pretty blind. Yeah.
I guess they're gonna try to pick fruit, and maybe they're upset about it. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, Grapes of Wrath comes from the Bible.
Okay.
It's a biblical passage. I don't remember the exact passage, but it has probably more significance in the novel.
Okay. I probably need to check that out.
I should have written down kind of where the actual phrase comes from, but I was remiss in that. But what did you think? Because you went into this movie pretty blind. What did you think about the grapes, the angry grapes, the Grapes of Wrath?
I thought this movie was good. It didn't set the world on fire for me. It wasn't a... with the star power behind it and all that, and the director, I thought in hindsight that I was going to be more over the moon with the movie, and I just found it good. Like I did find it excellent. I didn't find it elevating the genre or elevating film and all that kind of stuff. I just found it good and interesting. I like this look at Depression era. It's the Great Depression, right? Mm-hmm. Era America, the Dust Bowl, and all that. I like that look into it. I think that's interesting. It's not something a lot of movies I've seen around that. Mm-hmm. So it's novel to me, and it's based off a novel. It's novel to me to see that kind of world and that interesting kind of area and stuff. So it's I'm trying to figure out. I kind of wish. I think this movie, for me, we spend a little more time on the road to get there than I feel like it's really necessary. I feel like it takes away a little bit from the movie. I wish it was more like, let's pack up and then all of a sudden we're in California and we're doing the migrant working thing and seeing what conditions are like there and spending more time on it. But I guess the reason why I say that is I don't know how closely this adheres to the source novel and all that. Yeah. Because I find it very interesting that, when we start the movie, we meet Tom Joad, and he just got out of the penitentiary, he says, for beating a man to death unintentionally, it sounded like. And he meets up with the preacher, which is pretty interesting. And we kind of follow him along. But then right like 10 minutes, 15 minutes before the end of the movie, he runs off, right? Because he doesn't want to get caught from the police. And then we kind of focus on Ma Joad and all that kind of stuff. And I really felt like, and again, not knowing the source material, so I don't know how well this adheres to it. I think the movie actually would have been better if it was all really told from Ma Joad's perspective, and the movie began and end with her, and we could have her, getting ready, they're like hours away, it feels like, from packing up and moving out when Tom meets him, when he gets released early and all that kind of stuff. And I think if we flip that around, we had Maude, maybe worried about him and all that kind of stuff, then he comes in, and really the movie is more centered around her versus him, would have been a lot more interesting to me. Because he kind of gets into a lot, but he feels like he is also a little bit of a rapscallion himself and all that. And I think it would have played better for me more if it was like Ma Joad was constantly worried about, Tom's going out and doing this stuff. And it's not like he purposefully goes out and tries to cause trouble. It just seems like trouble always finds him. All that, especially like when he's in the camp, and then, spoiler alert, obviously, for the movies we talk about, the preacher the priest former priest he hangs out with gets killed, and all that stuff. He gets beat upside the head. and all that. It just seems like he kind of every time he ventures out, he kind of gets pulled into these random encounters and all that kind of stuff. So for me, I thought it was good. I wished the story just didn't really click with me. And again, I think if it was more focused on John Joad, it would have been a more interesting story for me. And again, I could be wrong. People could love this novel that I'm misrepresenting and all that kind of stuff.
People do love the novel.
Yeah, but that's kind of where the movie kind of left me cold a little bit on it. I just didn't find Tom Joad that interesting of a character as portrayed on screen. Like, he didn't bring a whole lot to it for me. And I mean, Henry Fonda is a great actor, so I could be definitely in the minority with that. But that's kind of where I fell with watching Grapes of Wrath for the first time. So before we get into it anymore, I'm going to pass it over to you. You said you've seen it once before. Do you remember anything about the first time you saw it?
Yeah, I really liked the movie a lot. It's probably been 20 years since I've seen it. It's been a while.
And what'd you think about it this time around?
I still really like it a lot. I love Henry Fonda. Like, I think Henry Fonda, I don't know that he's like the greatest actor or anything. I don't think that's it. I just like the way he looks, and I especially like the way he talks.
Yeah.
Like, because he has such a distinctive voice. I just think he's just a cool looking dude. But again, I mean, I'm like you. Obviously, both of us said we haven't read the novel. Apparently, from what I understand, the movie, and this is, I think I gleaned all this from Wikipedia, so, take that with a grain of salt. Apparently, the movie follows the first half of the book pretty closely, but it diverges a lot sort of in the second half. And I feel like the book, at least according to what I read, is a lot more kind of downbeat as far as the way that it turns out, the way that things end up. Like in this, she gives a speech towards the end talking about we're the people and we live and we're going to go on. They can't keep us down, basically. So it's a more upbeat kind of positivity kind of thing, the ending on. Also, the book, at least some scholars argued that the book has religious overtones as far as Tom Joad is like a Christ-like figure. Well, the title, but Tom Joad is like a Christ-like figure almost, that sort of thing. So I don't think any of that is really in the film. I think this movie. So A, I love Henry Fonda. B, I like these movies, or I like movies about the working man, trying to overcome, kind of being crushed under the heel of capitalism, if you will. So movies about unionizing, or like Norma Ray, or Harlan County, USA, which is a documentary, or Mate Wand, the John Sayles movie. I like all those kind of movies because I want to see the little guy triumph. I want to see him, go far. And this movie is not only about that, but it's also it's like a transformation movie, and I like those kinds of movies too, where a character is enlightened in some way. And in this movie, it's the Tom Joad character that becomes enlightened by Jim Casey, who ends up dying, the former preacher that ends up dying. But Tom Joad is just kind of an aimless guy, spent 4 years in the penitentiary, comes out, all of his family are just, peach pickers and stuff, these aren't Rhodes Scholars or anything like that. They're simple folk. But of course, those were like what my answers were like. I remember my grandparents talking about living during the Great Depression and how hard things were. And not this movie, the movie we were talking about Wednesday, they mentioned somebody came to the door like begging for food. And I remember my grandmother saying when she was a girl, people would come to the door and beg for food, and her parents had to turn them away. They didn't have any extra to give them and stuff like that. So, I kind of have a soft spot for all this kind of thing, this kind of era. So I think I like that. Another reason I really like this movie is I think the cinematography is beautiful.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I feel like I say this with all the black and white movies we talk about, but it is a gorgeous to look at movie.
Yeah.
And I liked we saw like a building get run over. This movie saw like didn't we see a dust storm in this movie? Or was it the second one?
I know in the second movie.
Okay.
I can't remember if in this movie.
But we saw some like interesting things in this movie. But it's also shot
and all the nighttime scenes, like when they go into the house, and I didn't write his name down, but it's like Muley. Muley is in the house, and it's just lit by candlelight, and he's got like the shadows on their faces and stuff. So the cinematography was done by Greg Toland, who's the guy that went on to shoot Citizen Kane the year after this, and of course, like invented all kinds of crazy techniques for Citizen Kane, and is lauded heavily in the world of cinematographers, as he should be. But yeah, he's the guy that shot The Grapes of Wrath. So I think it's a great looking movie. I like the kind of we shall triumph, or we're gonna make it. The kind of the transformation that Tom Joad goes through, in that I didn't kind of finish what I was saying before. He's kind of this aimless guy, and they make it to California, and he's still just kind of like, well, I'm going to go over here and see what's going on. It's my terrible Henry Fonda impression. But eventually he realizes, like Jim Casey says, and of course Henry Fonda makes a speech also about how it's not about us as the individual. It's about, a fella's got a soul that's a piece of the big soul, and I'm going to be everywhere. I'm every man, basically. I'm every working man. I'm every working man's ambition. I'm every working man's desire to have a good life for himself and for his family and all that kind of stuff. I like all that stuff. I think it's really cool. And again, I mean, I think the book has a lot more kind of political leanings as far as that stuff goes, which I think you can kind of see that in the movie. But I don't think it's as overt, because obviously, a decade after this, in the 1950s, there would be a lot more anti-communism kind of sentiment, and obviously, when you start talking about unionizing and doing things for the greater good, then you get called red, and you get called communist and stuff like that. So it kind of walks a fine line. But I think the movie's really, really good. I mean, I still really enjoy it, and it makes me want to read the book. Yeah. I feel like I should read the book, but I'm such a lazy guy. I never read books anymore. Yeah. I'm terrible that way.
No, all that makes sense. I should look up a comparison of the two, just to see a little bit, glean a little bit more insight into it. Like I said, I don't think this is a bad movie. I'm just not bowled over with it, and I wish I was, but it just didn't hit me like that. And I do like these. I mean, we did like Fist, and we did Hoffa. I like these. I'm pro union. I like union movies and stuff like that. So I do like the sentiment behind it a little bit, or at least the sentiment I'm reading into it. Yeah. So
yeah, I agree. But just like in Fist, and I guess in Hoffa, you have to make sure that it's the union leaders that don't wind up exploiting people, just like the factory workers do. Yeah. So it's like what is it? Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Yeah. That sort of thing. Grapes of Wrath was nominated for several Academy Awards. It was nominated for editing. It lost to Northwest Mounted Police. Never heard of it or seen it. Nominated for Best Sound. It was won by Strike Up the Band. Adapted screenplay, but the Philadelphia Story won that. Best Actor for Henry Fonda, but he lost to Jimmy Stewart from the Philadelphia Story. Nominated for Best Picture, but it lost to Alfred Hitchcock's Rebecca. However, it did win 2 Academy Awards. The Grapes of Wrath won Best Supporting Actress for Jane Darwell as Ma Joad, and it won Best Director for John Ford. I think John Ford won like 6 Oscars total in his career, so this is one of them, one of the 6. And The Grapes of Wrath was one of the very first 25 films to be selected for preservation by the Library of Congress back in 1989. Wow. It is 100% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. 88% audience score. Roger Ebert in print gave it 4 stars, and Leonard Maltin also gives it 4 stars. Yep. It is a critical darling, both the movie and the book. And again, I'm going to get on reading that book.
Yeah, we will. I promise. We'll hold you accountable.
I'll give you a full report.
All right. Well, that is The Grapes of Wrath. On these Monday episodes, we like to talk about what we've been watching. Last week you went first, so I'll go first this week.
Alrighty. I
want to call out 2 things that I've been watching. One was that I mentioned last week that I was watching some music documentaries, and I watched another one that is a recent one that was about David Bowie called Moon Age Daydream. You remember the trailers and all that stuff from the movie?
Yeah, I do remember seeing a trailer for that. Yeah.
It's streaming now on HBO Max, and I wish I can say I liked it. I did not, and it's not for matter of. It's just taste, actually, for me.
Yeah.
So it's the way Moon Age Daydream is shot and presented is more like a montage and like a more like a tone poem of different things. So we kind of have this interview with David Bowie that's playing in the background, and sometimes you'll cut to clips of him talking and like in these TV shows and these interviews, and then you'll have his music playing in the background. But really, it's just like a bunch of like images and movies and all this kind of stuff from his life and things that are connected to it on theme and all that kind of stuff. So it's really this kind of abstract way of kind of portraying all this kind of stuff. And for me, like I said with Daft Punk Unchained, I was looking for something that's a little bit more straightforward in a documentary, something where I can kind of glean a little bit more on what's going on and understand David Bowie a little bit more. And this movie is not out to present that or give you any of that. So it kind of left me cold in that aspect because it just wasn't really what I was looking for in terms of a documentary.
The trailer that I saw did not make me want to see it.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I thought the trailer looked cool, but I thought that was going to be like not the whole movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think I was kind of worried it would be.
Yeah.
So it's good to know. Man, I'll probably skip it.
The other thing I watched just came out on digital this week as we're filming. And it's Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves. I've been wanting to see this movie. I actually wanted to see it in theaters, didn't get a chance to make that happen for myself. So I purchased a copy digitally. It's written by Francis Daly, and I forgot his other author he works with, but they're the same people that did like Date Night or Game Night and some other movies. Francis Daly, he's an actor. He was in like Bones and stuff like that. This movie got a lot of positive critical acclaim, and so that made me really excited about it.
It looked fun.
It looks fun. It is kind of fun, but it's kind of not good. It's like, but it's not like schlocky not good, like King Solomon's Mine schlocky not good. It's kind of like, I don't know. I enjoyed it. I had fun watching it, but I just expected something a little bit more out of it, and not something like better or more serious. I just expected something a little bit funnier. It just felt like the jokes were very timid, and like they didn't really land for me very much. So I was hoping for something a little bit more, something that had a little sizzle and sparkle to it, and this movie just felt kind of almost paint by the numbers a little bit. So, but that all being said, I did enjoy watching it. So I just wanted to be blown back a little bit, and I wasn't. So I don't know. Your mileage may vary with it. I think I'm kind of in the minority with that, but but I enjoyed it, and I own it now, so I can revisit it whenever I want. So that's what I've been watching. Moon Age Daydream and Dungeons and Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves. What have you been watching?
I will also call out two things that I have watched lately. The first one is Poker Face, but it is not the Natasha Lyonne Poker Face. It's the new Russell Crowe Poker Face
I hear that's terrible.
that he wrote and directed and acts in. I remember seeing the trailer for this at one time or another, and thought it looked pretty bad. But it's streaming on Hulu right now. And the other night, I was just looking for something to watch and thought, you know what, I'll give it a shot. I have been told sometimes I look a little like Russell Crowe. I don't see it, but I think it's just because of the hair or something. I don't know, now the gray, because we're both pretty gray. So I watched it. I will say this. Overall, I didn't think it was that good. But it suffers from, like, I give it a B for effort. Yeah. And I would say, if you like Russell Crowe, and you have Hulu, I'd say it's actually worth watching. It's not that great. I wouldn't even say it's that good. Not all that good, but it's interesting. The biggest problem that it has is that he has no idea what kind of movie he wants it to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to spoil it, obviously, because we don't spoil things unless we're actually talking, unless that's the focus of the episode. So I can't give too much away about it. But unfortunately, it just has too many ideas that he should have jettisoned some of that stuff and just focused on, I want the movie to be this type of film. But he tries to make it way too many different things, and it just doesn't work. But it's watchable. I mean, I will say, and it's like 90 minutes again, which I'm all about. So it flies by. Like I didn't find it. I never really found it boring. I think he does a good job in it. And parts of it are, I think, pretty well written. Because again, I do believe he wrote the screenplay in addition to directing it. But he should have focused more on like what kind of story he was trying to tell, and just stuck with that one thing. Because the movie just tries to be too many things, and it ultimately just kind of falls apart. But it's, again, if you like Russell Crowe and you have Hulu and you got time to spare, I'd say go ahead and give it a watch, because you might like it. It's frustrating because like it could have been really good, but it just doesn't quite get there. The other thing I've been watching, I've been watching the NBA playoffs because they're going on right now. The other day, I had not quite an hour and a half to kill before I was going to watch one of the games that was coming on. And I was in the mood to watch a movie. Yep. So what do you do when you got to watch, and I didn't want to watch a TV show, like an episode or something. What do you do when you only have like 75 minutes, 80 minutes maybe, to watch a film?
Animated feature.
No, you find a film that was on Amazon Prime that you talked about before.
Oh, no. This never ends well.
Called Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes.
Oh, yeah.
You watched that, right?
I did. I watched it a year or two ago. I was telling you about that.
So it's on Prime Video.
Yep.
And it's only like 70 minutes or something like that. It's like 70, 75, something like that. It's pretty short. And I was like, that's perfect. I can watch this and then I'll watch the game afterwards. And I really liked it.
Yeah. It's inventive.
It's very inventive. And again, I love all that kind of Twilight Zone-y kind of stuff. This is just a very clever time. I mean, it has time, or it has infinite 2 minutes. So it deals with time, but it deals very much with time. And it's cool and it's clever. And they do enough little inventive stuff with it to fill out the 70 minutes. Had they tried to pad it to 90 minutes or 100 minutes or something, probably would have been too much.
Yeah, fall apart.
But because it's just slightly over an hour, I think it's fine exactly as it is. It's a fun, clever movie that's, again, streaming on Prime Video right now. Can't talk about it too much because can't really give away too much. But if you like, time travel type stuff, if you like Twilight Zone, sci-fi, Primer, whatever, time crimes, if those are your bag, then you will enjoy Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes. But I am glad because I've never heard of it until you talked about it. And I happened to see, I've kept it in my mind since you talked about it, but I've just never gotten around to watching it. And because the other day I was scrolling through, I was like, hey, there it is. Yep. I watched it and I'm glad I did. So Thank you.
There you go.
Yeah. And you should watch it too if you like that sort of stuff.
All right. Well, I'm glad it was a well spent 70 minutes.
Yes. And I actually have a copy of the same people that made that movie. I have a copy of one of their other movies.
Oh.
So we'll have to check that out.
We'll check that out for sure. All right. That's what we've been watching. So Andy decided to watch a movie based off a novel that takes place around the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl, and all that kind of stuff. What did you decide to pair with this movie, Grapes of Wrath?
Yes. Well, so David Carradine, who's the son of John Carradine, was only about 4 years old when his father played Jim Casey in The Grapes of Wrath. But about 30 years later, 36 years actually after 1940, in 1976, he got the chance to play a person who was living in this case, he's living in very north Texas, up in the Panhandle area by Oklahoma, who also wants to travel west for a better life to California. And in this case, David Carradine's playing a real life person, Woody Guthrie, and the movie's called Bound for Glory. So we'll talk about that on Wednesday.
All right. Sounds good. Stay tuned Wednesday for that. Please like, subscribe, share, do all that social media stuff. It really does help. We really do appreciate it. And stay tuned Wednesday when we find out how Bound for Glory David Carradine is. And we'll see you soon, guys. Have a good one.
Bye.